From the crossroads of the Ozarks, it's PID Radio. Welcome. I'm Derek Gilbert.
I'm Sharon Gilbert, and we are delighted you've chosen to join us on this February 1st day, looking towards Groundhog Day.
Dun, dun,
again.
Dun. Yes.
And again, and again, and again. That meteorologist is going to pop his little head out to determine exactly what happens to all of us.
What happens to the groundhog?
Well, that's a good point. And is the groundhog paid for this?
That's a really good question.
What does Phil do the rest of the year?
Well, I don't know. I think he gets a pretty good lifestyle. I don't know if he's treated as well
Glory,
as Chunk the groundhog. Glory is joining us here in the living room.
Let me put her in the crate.
Okay.
Come on, let's go to bed.
Okay, Mom.
Yeah. Now, the dogs are really good. Thank you, Eileen Pilato. Is that how it pronounces her last name?
Yeah, or Piloto, I think.
Pilato. So, who we call Aunt Eileen. No, in here. Bedtime.
They've been crate trained very well by Eileen, so just simply say those words and they're off to
say go to bed. But in Glory's case, I have to find her something to chew on.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, as long as they're not in there for too terribly long, an hour or so, she's content with something to chew on. We recorded some programs at Skywatch TV studio a few days ago, and Derek and I were both, here you go, honey. Just gave her the peanut butter bone. We were both in cranes, so the dogs were on their own because their Aunt Eileen, with whom they stay when they're boarded, she was out of town.
Right.
So Derek and I had to leave the dogs here on their own, and by the time we got back, there was a snowstorm of fluff on the floor.
Yeah, the stuffing from the
quilt
comforter,
that was
the
in
quilt
there.
that was in the bed.
Yeah, we long ago stopped putting one of the dog beds in the crate because Glory would eat that. And it's only when she's bored, she doesn't have anything, or she's not happy that we're not back. She's alone. Yeah. Well, with Grace. Don't leave me with Grace this long.
Well, anyway, she was out this morning. She was sharing the couch with me here and then suddenly decided to jump up on my chest. It's like, well, okay, that suddenly threatens the electronics here.
It does, which is why otherwise we'd keep them in here. But yeah, many of you I know love Grace and Glory, especially their jokes.
Need to work harder on being more consistent with getting those together and putting those out at night.
I love the Glory's most recent joke about the font.
Two fonts walk into a bar. Bartender says, "Get out. We don't serve your type."
Yeah.
But
I love that. Yeah. Comic Sans. Yeah. No doubt. So things are going on in the world. I know many of you are well aware of it.
Yeah. Before we jump in, just a reminder to download our free app, which gets all of our content right into your smartphone or tablet, whether it's iOS, Android, Amazon, Kindle Fire. You can also get versions for your set-top boxes if you've got Roku, Apple TV, Amazon Fire TV, or if you've got a smart TV preloaded with Roku or Fire TV. Get the GHTV, the Gilbert House Ministries app, downloaded. Brings all of our content right to you. Because if you're depending on social media, or if you're depending on the social media, like the video sharing sites, you know
you know where they are.
BlueTube, that there probably is one out there, and I probably just promoted something.
Probably a MeTube as well.
MooTube if you're watching cow videos. Actually, MooTubes are like a yogurt thing.
Oh,
they get those for Nicole.
Yeah,
those like sugary yogurts. Anyway, we may at some point say something especially on A View from the Bunker, my podcast, that'll violate community standards.
Or sometime in the past, and that we've been around for 20 years.
Well, yeah,
so
they've gone back.
A lot of content.
They've gone back in the past and deleted videos from several years earlier because suddenly they decided it was no longer appropriate. Bottom line is, if you get our app, that you bypass all of that.
Also want to encourage you to follow Derek and me. We have accounts on X, and we also have accounts on Telegram, where we share a lot of news articles.
Right. You'll find the links in the show notes below this program. We've got links there to our Telegram channels and also to our Substack. I'll add that in there too. We've been releasing a lot of articles on Substack because we've been releasing articles regularly at gilberthouse.org.
At a lightning speed rate.
So on Substack, trying to catch up. So about 5 a week over the last few weeks. And that's a place to get a lot of the written content that we've produced over the last 10 years.
Well, exactly. If you're in a position where buying a book is difficult, many people are in rough circumstances economically. So we would like for you to have it for free, give you as much as we can without, giving away everything. But most of the content of those books.
Yeah, many of our books. And this was something Tom Horn started. We saw this with Tom Horn at the Skywatch TV website, he would release a new book. We're doing this with some of the older books that we've got out there, but as we catch up, they will be newer and newer. Release an entire book over the span of 24, 30, 36 installments of 2,000 or 3,000 words apiece. So manageable bite-sized chunks. And I've been doing that. The current series going out at Substack is from the book Bad Moon Rising. But anyway, it's not behind a paywall, so you don't need to pay to get any of that content.
And if you want the whole book, you could always go to Amazon to get that, or you can go to the Skywatch TV store. Our store, the Gilbert House store, we no longer ship directly from this property.
Yeah.
But we have links to all the places where you can get this content if you want to get an ebook version, a Kindle version, whatever it is, and Audible.
Many of them are available on Audible now, too. So you can find those links at gilberthouse.org/store. That link still works, but it just will redirect you to the places where you can get the books. Because we were spending hours a day just preparing, shipping, and driving stuff to the post office.
And finally, through an interesting set of circumstances, the Lord just made it clear, okay, spend these hours doing other things.
Yeah. So that is the reason for that. But while you're there, please check out the links. You can get PID Radio merchandise now. Caps, shirts, sweatshirts, mugs.
And Armored Sheep.
Armored Sheep, Sharon's new podcast. That cute little sheep wearing his suit of armor, standing there with his sword.
It is the cutest thing ever.
It really is.
I would love to say that I totally drew that all by myself, but no, some of that is, I purchased it through Adobe stock.
But you put it together, did the design
I did.
work. Yeah. Anyway, all of that available through gilberthouse.org/store. Well, the big news this week, of course, is the terrible tragedy that took place Wednesday night over Washington, D.C.
I know. Look, I understand that there are a lot of opportunities for conspiracy spinning. And I'm not saying that there is not something more to it. I think as time goes on, that I pray the investigation actually brings out all of the things. Derek and I have a good friend who's a pilot. And he shared a YouTube account, Pilot Steve, Captain Steve.
Captain Steve, but it's got 3 E's in the first set of Steve. So it's Steve.
Yeah, you can link it in the show notes.
I will put it in the notes.
It's a very thought-provoking, I think, rational look at what happened.
Yeah, and what our friend told us is that this was a solid evaluation of what happened.
Yep.
And what it comes down to is this. When you listen back to air traffic control, which was in contact with the incoming American Airlines flight and the pilot of the Black Hawk helicopter with a crew of 3, the tower twice asked, do you have American flight, and I forget the flight number, 5373, something like that.
CRJ or something like that.
Yeah, it was a Bombardier CRJ, and I forget the designation, the number. I don't have that in front of me at the moment.
But the reply was yes.
Yeah, twice said, yes, I have visual, we'll maintain visual separation.
Exactly, and essentially saying, I'm in control of this. The onus is on me to make sure that I avoid this. But this Captain Steve seemed to think that the pilot of the Black Hawk was looking at the wrong plane.
Yeah. It was American Eagle Flight 5342. American Eagle is the regional airlines, and we often fly American Eagles.
A lot.
It was in fact, we fly often on those Bombardier regional jets.
And it's hilarious because there was one time...
CRJ 700.
Yes, there was one time in Springfield when we were getting through TSA, and the pilot of one of these planes walked past and he said, "Hey, science."
He recognizes from Sci Friday.
Yeah,
surprising.
So these are, at least here, they're great people. The pilots who pilot these planes, they do their very best. They're sharp. They're well-educated.
Well-trained, yeah.
Well-trained. So whatever happened, I pray that the truth comes out, and I pray for everybody on this.
All families, the families involved. Yeah, because you had 64 passengers and crew.
Totally.
64 on the American Eagles flight, and then 3 on the Black Hawk. And those
you
three,
had said a pilot with a crew of 3. I think there were only 3 people total on the Black Hawk.
Yeah, it was a crew of 3, right?
Including the pilot.
Including the pilot.
Yeah.
So, and again, according to the air traffic control recordings of the communication, it appears that the pilot of the Black Hawk thought he was looking at the lights of the incoming flight. This was taking place at about 8:45 p.m. local time, so it was dark, and he's looking at these lights coming in the sky, but apparently was seeing the plane behind the one that he actually hit.
Yeah.
And it's just human error. I mean, I know that there is a tendency whenever something major like this happens on the internet for people to immediately start putting out there. We've seen the meme on social media saying, oh, runway 33. Oh,
Yeah.
nudge, nudge, wink, wink. 33, of course, being a number that
Right.
relates to the number of degrees of Scottish Rite Freemasonry. And but having listened to several analyses of this by pilots, experienced pilots, there are many airports in America that have a runway 33.
It has to do with the orientation that they're coming in.
Right.
doesn't
It's
it?
not the number. It's not the number of runways at the airport. Runway 33 means it's the runway that you approach on a compass heading of 330 degrees, which is north-northwest.
Right.
That same runway, when you look at a map of Reagan National Airport, it's only got 3 runways. When you come from the other direction, it's runway 15. It's telling the pilot what direction you approach.
Yes,
And
but
why is it 15? 150 degrees plus 180 degrees, because exactly the
I
opposite.
know, but even though we explain this, and even though we know this, we also know that there are individuals who have certain accounts
Yeah.
that will still make a lot about it. You
Yeah.
know, say that
Oh,
this is-
Derek, Sharon, you're just so naive.
I know.
Like,
You know, I
okay.
think most of the time it's human error in cases like this, and because we're discussing the idea of human error, it's possible. There was another plane crash, a Learjet in
Yeah.
Philadelphia this
This
morning.
happened last night, Friday night.
Late. Okay, I saw it this morning at 3:00, so I wasn't aware that it happened last night. But it did indeed happen. It was a Learjet medical flight
Right.
that was taking a young girl and her mother who live in Mexico. The girl had been treated at the Shriners Hospital in Philadelphia, and they were on their way back to Mexico after this life-saving treatment. And that's the terrible irony of it. And they were going to hop through, probably refuel, at the Branson Airport,
Yeah,
Springfield,
Springfield, Branson,
just
right.
where we fly out of. And what I have read, and still a lot of things are coming out about it, what I have read is that the plane accelerated extremely quickly at a steep angle and then crashed. So possibly stalled. I saw someone say from the media, someone who is a pilot, say it could be electronic failure.
Okay.
Now, that will bring conspiracy theorists up.
Sure, sure.
But the tragedy is that those 6 people,
6 people are now
the
dead,
mother,
and there were people
the
on the
daughter,
ground who were
and
injured. Yeah.
2 pilot, co-pilot, and a doctor, and another medical personnel.
Yeah, and I'm slightly familiar with the area where that crashed. It crashed near Roosevelt Boulevard in Northeast Philly.
Oh,
And
you
I
used to live in Philly,
I used
yeah.
to live in that part of Northeast Philadelphia, near Roosevelt Boulevard and Welsh Road.
Mm.
So I don't know exactly where along Roosevelt Boulevard this hit, but I used to drive Roosevelt Boulevard all the way from the Northeast down into Bala Cynwyd,
Mm-hmm.
which is close into Philadelphia, one of the near-in suburbs. So I surely passed that area at least twice a day.
Absolutely.
For
And
6 days a week during the time I lived out there.
there were some doorbell cameras and other CCTV
Yeah.
that picked up what happened there. So I'm sure that NTSB is going to be taking a long, hard look
Yeah.
because the crash affected not only those on the plane, but also anyone on the ground.
ground,
because
right.
it was a lot of debris and a lot of fire.
Yeah, 4 injuries on the ground reportedly. What is tragic, getting back to the crash at DCA, the Reagan Airport, is that it was less, even faster than conspiracy theorists began speculating. There were politicians trying to make hay on both sides.
Oh, I know.
And the next morning, of course, President Trump made comments, and he made comments about the FAA having been diversified in a very radical way by the previous administration. I'm not sure that had anything to do with anything. A congresswoman from Texas, Jasmine Crockett, blamed Trump's hiring freeze, federal hiring freeze. Like, okay,
Okay,
look, first of all, the air traffic controllers are exempt they're not part of the hiring freeze. Secondly, even if you'd hired a new air traffic controller the day Trump took office on January 20th, the months and years of training, it's just absolutely ridiculous and reprehensible that somebody would take this tragedy with 67 dead and try to score political points with it. It is, Representative Crockett, you are a bad person.
Yes, I do agree with that.
Yeah.
I do. And as you say, both sides were trying to spin it. So
Right.
there's neither side is exempt.
There is nothing at this point that should be politicized about that crash. And I'll say again, based on the analysis of a couple of different experienced pilots who posted videos shortly thereafter, seemed rational in their explanation. And when you compare it by analyzing the air traffic control recordings, it just appears that this is just a tragic case of human error.
Left turn, as Derek and I say to one another when we're going to a different topic. Left turn. There are a couple of things with regard to our economy that have been in the news. And we're going to get to the spiritual aspects of all of this because that's what PID Radio, Peering into Darkness, is all about. We try to figure out the spiritual warfare behind what appears to be geopolitical warfare. We look at the theopolitics behind it. But the geopolitics of what's going on, the economy in the United States and many Western nations, including the European Union and Great Britain and just about any first world nation, the economy is really bad right now in all of them. But President Trump has been signing lots and lots of tariff, I guess they're in executive orders or memoranda, how is this going to change our economy? Can you explain that for people that because the left is freaking out?
Yeah.
He's going to ruin our economy.
Well, it's because they're globalists, first of all, and they're trying to make Trump look bad. The tariffs applied to foreign imports would require the importers of those goods to pay the U.S. government a tax worth 25% of the value of whatever it is they're bringing in. Now, I've not seen the news to see what exactly you mentioned steel?
Well, first of all, a lot of the news is relative to tech things like chips.
Okay.
I think President Trump is trying to impress upon the tech manufacturers here in the United States to make the product here. Stop outsourcing it from China and other nations. Bring the money here. Make it locally so that not only is it less expensive in the long run, but also more trustworthy. Now, I say that along with the story that I'm going to talk about here in a second, but there are a lot of components when it comes to the tech sector. And President Trump has been meeting for a couple of months with tech leaders. I think he's trying very hard to put America first.
Well, that's what tariffs do, and the United States used tariffs, as Trump mentioned during the campaign, more than a century ago. McKinley used them quite
old.
a bit.
It's been around for a long time.
Late 19th century, we used tariffs to protect our industries. The United Kingdom did this back in the 19th century, until about the middle of the 19th century. Then they began looking at a more global approach and reducing tariffs on things coming in because you had influential members of parliament who had concessions on this, that, or the other. And, okay, this is coming from India, and we're part of the Dutch East Indies Company, so stop hitting our tea with tariffs or whatever.
Well, exactly.
So they were making money, but
a portion
the local
of the taxes or the revenue over there.
Right, but British industries were harmed, and that's when the United Kingdom, quite frankly, began to lose power. I mean, it was the world superpower in the 18th and roughly through the middle of the 19th century, even though they lost a couple of wars to the upstart colony.
Definitely flipped at World War I.
Yeah. Let's see. The 25% tariffs against Canada and Mexico, 10% tax on import from China. And I know that we import some oil products from Pemex from Mexico.
Yep.
Canada supplies some steel, computer chips, steel, oil, natural gas, copper, pharmaceutical drugs, and imports from the European Union. Again, the intention is to try to get to restart American industry, because you've got a lot of American industrialists. What really moved things away, and I wrote about this for, I forget which one of the anthology books that Tom Horn published, Defender Publishing, but it was about Trump during his first term I think I said, Trump will not save your bacon. And it's because he was pitting himself against the investment bankers. And really what happened in the UK was the investment bankers started speculating on currencies and making money that way instead of actually producing things. And that's what's happened in the United States. We no longer produce things. We've outsourced all of that to cheaper manufacturing in Mexico and in China and in other places around the world. And our bankers, our investment banks, are no longer investing in companies that make things. They're investing in investments. They're investing in financial derivatives. They're playing with money, and might as well be investing in baseball cards for all of it. It's a house of cards. So what Trump is trying to do is, number one, raise more money from tariffs than from taxes, which could lower taxes for the American consumer, and also encourage more business here, more manufacturing, which would mean more jobs. And so long term, it's that really is the strategy that we should pursue.
It is not going to lower prices immediately.
It will not, and of course that's why you get left-leaning media. But I repeat myself, saying the Associated Press headline: Trump tariffs on Canada, Mexico, China could mean higher inflation and prices. Talking about how the market just began to drop. The S&P 500 slumped on Friday after Trump announced these tariffs. Well, all right. The media is embedded, and the bureaucracy in D.C. is mainly left-leaning, just like what do they call it? It's not the swamp, it's the blob.
Oh, the blob, yeah.
In the UK, in London. The bureaucrats hate the conservatives. It's just the way it is. It's like Avi Lipkin describes the situation in Israel. 60% of the country is conservative, but the 20% who are socialist, the other 20%, Avi says 20% Arabs, but the other 20%, the socialists, are embedded at the highest levels of the judiciary, the banking system, the military.
And they steer the ship.
And they hate Netanyahu, and they hate the people who support Netanyahu. So that's what Trump is facing here. So will his tariffs work? I don't know, but I think we can agree that what they've been doing by investing in financial derivatives, we're going to invest in packages of mortgage loans.
I know. Or your life insurance policies.
Or life insurance policies. Hey, you Americans aren't dying fast enough. Okay, that could explain some things.
We'll invest in a whole bunch of other stocks that might help that.
Yeah, I think long term, what Trump is doing makes a lot of sense. The question is whether he can continue to push the policy through the swamp.
I agree with all of that. And because you have an economics degree, it's why I wanted you to explain it. But and I'm betting many of people listening right now, they already understood it. But in that same idea, economics, one of the stories that I stumbled upon this morning because I was looking for to see if the Federal Reserve had said anything new about whether or not they were going to change the interest on the lowest interest rate you can get. Remember a few years ago that it was down to 0%?
Yeah.
Or 0.1% or something?
Yeah, it's what economists call ZIRP, zero interest rate policy. Yeah. ZIRP or NIRP, negative interest rate policy.
And with that in mind, the story that I came up with that was presented to me first of all, headline is, ex-Federal Reserve senior advisor has been accused of conspiring with China to steal trade secrets.
Yeah. Not a new thing, sadly. I was listening to a story, and I didn't hear the whole thing, but Glenn Beck on his program the other day was interviewing a American tech entrepreneur who back in the 90s, late 90s, developed a chip that allowed for mobile devices like cell phones to connect with other devices like your computer or to connect with Wi-Fi. So basically it was a way to get your cell phone onto the internet. So
Yeah.
you could basically do what we now take for granted. Smartphones, you can get on the internet, you can go to Facebook and all. But until the 90s, you couldn't do that because the chips that connected to Wi-Fi routers were as big as a small shoebox.
Yeah.
And this company developed a way to do it on a chip that's about half the size of the nail on your little finger.
Some of them are getting so small, they're
Yeah.
like the size of a grain of sand.
But sadly, this company was small potatoes. And so they needed a bigger partner. And Qualcomm, which is a major player in the business, they approached Qualcomm, and Qualcomm was very interested, but they said, look, before we sign a deal, we've got to know exactly what it is we're dealing with. So they showed them enough of what they had done, and they said, we thought we were protected. We had non-disclosure agreements, and we had specifics, guys with their phone numbers and their home addresses.
But they were small potatoes.
But they were small potatoes.
Our lawyers are better than yours.
Yeah, you get your $200 an hour lawyer, and our $400 an hour lawyer will tie him up until you go bankrupt. My dad worked for a company back in Woodstock, Illinois. Interestingly enough, you opened up mentioning Groundhog Day.
Yeah.
They were located a block off of that cute little town square where they filmed Groundhog Day. So Dad and the other guys at work would go over there on the lunch break and watch Bill Murray, recording or filming the movie. Anyway, they developed a new type of clamp that was really, it was very simple design, but it's like, oh, okay, this little plastic clamp that'll clamp your hoses inside your car and when you need to pop it open, you just push one side one way, the other side the other way. It's very simple design. It's like one of those forehead slap things. Why didn't anybody think of this sooner? Well, anyway, they were small potatoes, small company. So they went to a big company with contracts in Detroit, in Milwaukee, and the company in Milwaukee basically stole their design. And it's like, well, you can't do that. And they're like, oh, well, so sue us. So Dad's boss's lawyer did, and thankfully for Dad's boss, the company in Milwaukee didn't shred all the documents. The internal documents said, yeah, what are they going to do, sue us?
Oh my gosh.
Anyway, but that's the thing. The reality of the world in which we live is you can have the best legal agreement drawn up, and it's only as good as the person who signs it. I knew a guy in Philly had an employment contract with a radio station there that guaranteed him if they ever let him go, he'd get 6 months severance. Well, they fired him. They offered him 2 weeks. He said, you can't do that. They said, well, sue us.
Oh, gosh.
And by the time you finally get another job in this business, you will be bankrupt and ruined. They finally gave him 4 weeks, but it wasn't the 6 months that he had been due in his contract.
Not at
Again,
all.
it's only as good as the people who sign it. So coming back to your point, this guy stealing stuff for China, this kind of industrial espionage goes on all the time.
Well, let's continue talking.
And it's sad that much of it is done by people who were looking out for their own interests and not for the people, especially in the case of somebody who's connected to the government, not the people he or she is supposed to represent.
It's that idea of love others as you love yourself.
Yeah.
That's what we're commanded to do as believers. Is everything okay?
Yeah,
I
just
noticed you
checking, just looking at the time.
Okay. Since we're on the economy, one of the I guess, anchors to first world economic theory is Keynesian economics,
right.
rather than Austrian economics. And Keynesian has been driving, especially the United States. And basically, it boils down to spend more money and you'll make more money. Your economy will improve if you spend lots and lots of money that's even made up.
Gross domestic product includes government spending, which is silly.
And I bring that up because the DOGE department under Trump has been uncovering lots and lots of waste.
Yeah.
And Elon Musk, now whether or not he can do this or not, but he is bragging on X that by 2026, he may have righted the ship, if you want to put it that way, because we are leaning drastically. And if you think of the United States as a ship, we're going to just flip over. You don't want that. You don't want to be upside down when you're a ship. But he is hoping, he thinks he can actually move us back to a position where we have much less debt.
Yeah.
Because right now, it's in the many trillions of dollars of debt. And to whom, and this is the big question, to whom do we owe the money? When you have debt, it implies that you owe money to someone or something.
Right.
To whom do we owe the money?
The money is owed to whoever buys the treasury bills that are used to finance the debt. The treasury, when it needs to issue more debt, will sell more treasury bonds.
To which I have to ask the question, are the owners of the T-bills the ones really calling the shots?
Well, that's a really good question. I don't think so. It's like the old saying, Donald Trump, I think, once said, I think I'm crediting the right person here, if I owe the bank $500 and I can't pay, I've got a problem. If I owe the bank $500 million and I can't pay, the bank has a problem. So the owners of U.S. debt, who tend to be sovereign funds from other nations, Japan, China, other nations, and a lot of smaller investors. I
know China owned a lot of it.
Yeah, my parents bought T-bills when we were young.
Mine
and
did too.
You mature after 10 years, 20 years, whatever, and then you can cash it in for full price.
My dad cashed all of his in because he used to work for the government, and when he retired at age 45 or so, he cashed a bunch of them in, and he was able to start his own business. He, repairing cars. So it brought in value to him and a lot of pleasure because he loved doing that. But I don't think that China is buying in those small amounts. Dad's were like $5, $10.
As of November last year, Japan is the largest foreign holder of U.S. debt. China has been buying U.S. debt since the year 2000. The UK has increased its holdings of U.S. debt. I don't have a list of as far as the percentages, but yeah, Japan, China, UK, major holders of U.S. debt. So the problem is for them, if the U.S. suddenly can't pay and they're holding all this debt, what do they do with it? There are some nations that have been, some reports over the past couple of years, China is selling off its treasury holdings, selling off its reserves of U.S. currency. And other governments will hold U.S. dollars because most foreign trade is denominated in U.S. dollars, and especially sales of oil. This was a deal that was worked out by Nixon with the Saudis back in the early 70s to sell all oil in dollars.
Well, that's one reason he took us off gold. He assumed the petrodollar was going to prop us up.
Yeah, oil has essentially become gold. Russia is trying to work other payment systems out with its allies, part of the BRICS nations, the economic bloc, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, also now including the UAE, Iran. Saudi Arabia has been invited. They haven't officially accepted, but they probably will. Egypt is in there, other nations. It's an alternative to the G7 and the U.S.-dominated world economic system. They're trying to come up with their own payment system. Russia got kicked out of SWIFT, which is the electronic transfer, economic transaction processing system that you use for credit cards internationally, things like that. Russia got kicked out of that, so they're setting up their own, and they're trying to set up a central bank digital currency. We talked about that.
Well, I think they already set it up. I think they had done that a couple of years ago, and they've been using that along with trading with China that way, I think.
Yeah, selling oil in yuan or rubles instead of in dollars.
I think they're fighting over who gets to be
right.
the kingpin there.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons Trump is using tariffs to try to nudge nations back into saying, you really want to keep using the dollar, don't you?
Let me keep putting you on the hot seat here, since you've got economics as a background.
Well, we need to take a break.
Oh, well, we'll come back to that after the break then.
The Bible has answers for many of the mysteries that have confounded humanity since the beginning of time.
That is so true. And we can answer those mysteries from the Bible. So we want to arm your children and grandchildren with the truth. And that's capital T, truth.
Fearless investigations into the most exciting book the world has ever known. The Bible's Greatest Mysteries, hosted by Derek and Sharon Gilbert. Every week, right here.
And now we are back from the break. Welcome back to PID Radio. I'm Derek Gilbert.
I'm Sharon Gilbert, and we want to remind you, of course, to download the app, but also remember that we are going to go to Israel in October. We'd love to have you join us. Derek and I are going to be leading the charge, and it will no longer be the Iron and Myth Tour. That's being arranged for 2026 because the Iron and Myth guys have other things that
commitments in October.
Really need to do in October. So when we changed the date to October, they said, can't do that. But Derek and I will be there. And if you are interested in going, you can go to lipkintours.com and you can look for the 2025 tours and you'll see our little faces there. And we would love for you to join us. It's going to be, I think, a very lovely tour, one bus probably. Mm-hmm. And that means one bus where you get to know everybody on the tour.
Yeah, and we had a similar situation during our solidarity mission to Israel back in May, where there were just 9 of us. And so we all sat together at every meal, got to know each other really well, still communicate back and forth through a Telegram channel. Mm-hmm. It's really a wonderful way to make some lifelong friends and experience a life-changing trip, especially at this time where Israel has really been through the ringer over the last 15, 16 months. We'll talk a little bit about the hostage release this past week, well, actually the last couple of weeks, and the way that took place this past Thursday.
We're praying that many of the sites that we've been going to traditionally will open up again because a lot of those are in the north. And we will definitely go to the sites in Jerusalem, but pray about it. You can put down a very small deposit, and if for some reason you cannot go or we change the dates and that date doesn't work out for you, Aaron Lipkin and his company will refund your money.
Yeah. Find the latest information at gilberthouse.org/travel, gilberthouse.org/travel, and we'll have the dates for the 2026 tour as soon as those are absolutely confirmed. Mm-hmm. Probably going to be just after Passover and the Feast of Unleavened Bread, so that's probably looking at
late April.
Mid to late. But we'll confirm that, and that's where you'll find that information.
Boy, I was just about to put you on the hot seat again, wasn't I?
Yes, tariffs, economy.
Well, no, actually I was going to ask you about our economy in general. What do you see in 2025? Do you think at the grocery store, are the prices going to come down?
I think so, and I think it's because the government is reining in spending, or starting to anyway, even though it's got some squalling taking place from the deep state. I do think it's hilarious. I was looking at an MSNBC article this morning about Trump's tariffs, and the headline, "What Trump's tariffs mean for the price of your shirts. What the heck are Trump and his team thinking?" And the point of the article is that when tariffs are applied to imported goods, the people who wind up paying the higher prices, meaning the people who pay the tariffs, which are, it's a form of taxation, are the consumers. Mm-hmm. It's like, well, I think it's really interesting that they finally noticed that the ultimate victim of government taxation is the consumer, because they never mention this when they're talking about we need to make sure the rich pay their fair share. All right, so the manufacturer of your washing machine who's rich is going to pay more, which means they're going to raise the price of their washing machines, which means you, the purchaser of the washing machine, are paying the tax that's supposedly soaking the rich. Mm-hmm. Well, they only noticed it now when they're talking about taxing stuff. AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, ranting about how we're going to pay more for coffee because Trump threatened the president of Colombia.
Oh, I know.
With 25% to get him to take the repatriation flights, which he had agreed to take. Mm-hmm. Inflation is not caused by government. It is not caused by greedy manufacturers or store owners trying to soak the poor consumer for more money. It is a result of too much money in circulation.
Yes, exactly. It's getting back to Keynesian economics.
Keynesian economics. You float more money out there. It's money is a commodity, like pork bellies, like corn futures, whatever, oil futures. When there is more of a product in the market, it is worth, each individual unit is worth less. Yes. It's like when you get go back to baseball cards. a rookie card. You only print 100 of them because you don't think he's going to be very good. And suddenly he was Rookie of the Year and he's a superstar. Everybody wants to own that card, and so they bid up the price. It's worth more. You take that same card and suddenly, oh, we've discovered there were 10,000 more back at the warehouse. Oh, well, now they're easier to get. They're not worth as much. That's what happens with dollars. You throw a lot of them into circulation, suddenly they're worth less, so it takes more of them to buy the dozen eggs or the gallon of milk.
So it's more than just bird flu that's driving.
It's more than just bird flu. It's the amount of money in circulation. Now, bird flu does have an impact on the price of eggs because, again, you've got the supply and demand.
Fewer chickens laying eggs.
Right. So the supply of eggs is reduced, which means each individual egg is worth more. At the same time, you've got more money out there, so each dollar is worth less, which means it takes a lot more dollars to buy those 12 eggs. But that's basically what it comes down to. That's the cause of inflation. It's not greedy capitalism.
But looking behind it, at the spirits behind it, you and I've written about and I've talked about the goddess Inanna. And this is a fallen entity, a fallen angel, if you want to call her that, who's actually not male or female. It's just they take on gender when they interact with human beings. And so throughout history, throughout most of history, this entity that probably arrived on Earth after Babel and was put in charge of one particular language group has assimilated herself into many more language groups with a lot of different names, but it's my belief that she's actually the whore of Babylon. She's the one who is, because if you look at her epithets and look at her activity and what she is in charge of within human civilization, she actually brought civilization. She brought the Mez. She stole them, and then she brought the Mez, which are all the secrets to civilization, sort of like another version of Prometheus. And she is the goddess of war. She has skulls around her waist and other things like that, depending upon what her name is. And she's also the goddess of ritual sex. We're not talking about love. No. We're talking about something entirely different that has a lot of violence to it.
Right.
She has priests who castrate themselves in order to serve in her temples, and she loves the idea of forcing mankind to not only engage in her twisted behaviors, but also to buy and sell only when she allows it. She has worked, I believe, with another entity that has a lot of different names and may be called Mercury.
Nabu in the Babylonian.
In the Babylonian, exactly. And both of them were deities of writing and bookkeeping. So economics again.
Mercury, whose name comes from the same root as mercantile, merchant, and so forth. It is as we argued in the book Giants, Gods, and Dragons, that entity, Nabu, Mercury, Hermes, probably the entity that was in John's mind when he wrote about the rider on the black horse, the one who was carrying these scales, but in Greek, zugos means yoke. We see an increasing drive toward enslaving humanity under this sort of economic yoke. You get people hooked into 30-year mortgages and financing automobiles that are ridiculously expensive anymore. $30,000, $40,000,
exactly.
And
long
instead of
payouts.
I mean, it used to be you'd pay on a 48 or 60 month. If you couldn't pay cash, you'd finance it for 4 or 5 years, thinking, okay, well, I'm probably going to hang onto the car that long. Now there's a record number of vehicles that are over 10 years old on the roads. Our vehicles, I mean, mine turns 20 this year. Probably time to retire. It's over 190,000 miles on it now. But people are not financing
they're vehicles that are well known for going way past 200,000.
Very dependable. But now you're getting cars that are being financed for 6, 7, 8 years even. And you're essentially on a treadmill, a finance treadmill. Now, at least with some of those loans, you can get very low interest rates, 0% or whatever, because the automotive business is not doing quite what they had hoped this year, especially not with the EV requirements under the Biden administration. Thankfully, that was one of the first executive orders that President Trump signed. We're eliminating the EV mandate that half of vehicles got to be zero emission by the end of this decade, when last year I think only 8% of vehicles sold were EVs. You get another EV manufacturer just went belly up this past week, making electric buses. Anyway, this I think is intentional, where people are drowning in credit card debt, where you mentioned zero interest rate policy or negative interest rate policy, which they were experimenting with in the EU and in Japan over the past 5-6 years to try to stimulate the economy. The economy is moribund. It is stagnant. Hey, maybe if we start penalizing people for holding on to money. I mean, it used to be you put money in the bank, you'd get a couple percentage points, even 5-6%. I remember
You were
when I was a kid.
encouraged by the bank to
save.
open a savings
Right.
account. Get a free toaster.
Right. But no, now they want you to out there consume. Ours is a consumer-driven economy, not a manufacturing-driven economy anymore. So there's no benefit to people who save. In fact, if you're saving and you're getting 0.25% interest, 1% interest, but inflation is running at 10, 12%, you're actually losing money by holding it in the bank. So get out, spend it now while it's worth more. That is crazy. That is like George Jetson on that treadmill. Jane, get me off this crazy thing.
Well, that's the thing.
The sad thing is the only way to correct for this, and coming back to what I was saying before, what I see coming in 2025, I think there will be a correction. I think the Bureau of Labor Statistics under Biden was cooking the books. Zero Hedge, which is a website I look at, a news site that I look at on a regular basis because they have a kind of a libertarian outlook on the news, but they also look at a lot of economic things. And they showed convincingly that the BLS was lying about the economic statistics, lying about the inflation rate, lying about the employment numbers.
So essentially taking the L out of the BLS and leaving the two letters.
Exactly, yes. And now that they don't have a Democrat in office to protect, or a member of the deep state, because I think if it had been an approved Republican, they probably would have continued with this game. But since they don't like Trump, he's not part of the deep state. He wants to start draining the swamp. And he's showing a lot more energy about it this time around than he did 8 years ago when he was willing to listen. He was getting his feet wet, and he was thinking that some of the guys who were making nice to him were actually guiding him wisely. Instead, they were guiding him in how to preserve the status quo. This time he's going in there and he's taken an axe to the root of some of these problems. I saw a panicky story from a news site, and it was more of an op-ed piece really than it was a news site. It was sent to me by a friend who said, "What do you think about this?" And my response was, "Sounds like panicked Democrats afraid they're about to lose their jobs." It was from the Treasury Department saying that Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, was demanding access to the Treasury Department's financial processing systems. And they were afraid. It's like, well, that means he'd be able to stop payments. He'd be able to start. I think what he wants is he wants to know what the Treasury Department is spending money on, where it's sending its money, because they've been tasked with President Trump with going in. And, no, this is a power grab. Musk he's not an elected official, and he's got no accountability, and he's making himself a dictator. No, I think.
Well, hold on. The head of the Federal Reserve is not an elected official.
No, appointed by the president.
There are a lot of people in that all of those departments that aren't elected.
Right. No, I agree. And the bureaucracy is trying to protect the bureaucrats. I think and maybe I'm giving Musk too much credit. I don't know. I know he's a technocrat. I know that there are aspects of his worldview that I disagree with.
Do we completely trust him? No, but
no, he is not.
He's
Elon
done
Musk,
some things that are helpful.
Yeah, and his X feed is hilarious. But I think what he's trying to do is see what is the Treasury Department allocating money for? What's it sending its money out for? Do we really need to spend $50 million on prophylactics for Gaza, for example, like the State Department was doing?
Yes, I know.
So that, I think, is driving a lot of the news cycle, like that MSNBC story. What's Trump doing with tariffs? Hey, you're going to wind up paying that money. Well, yeah, any tax winds up. Well, how come you didn't notice this when Democrats were saying we need to make the rich pay their fair share? It's all going to come down to the people who actually buy products. if Trump actually makes good on some of the noises he's been making about going with a fair tax.
I was about to ask about that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I interviewed a representative of the Fair Tax Foundation when I was hosting the daily secular talk radio program back in 2006 in Columbia. And at first I thought, okay, this sounds like a boondoggle. But as I began to understand it, it's like, wait a minute. No, this is a consumption tax. Here's how the fair tax works. You eliminate income taxes.
Mm-hmm.
You eliminate, I don't know how far you want to take it. I mean, they were advocating eliminating everything but the sales tax. And the sales tax then is where you roll all government income into a sales tax.
If you don't have a whole lot of money, you can't buy much. If you have a whole lot of money, you can buy big things like a big yacht or a big car.
Right. And so the wealthy wind up paying more of a fair share.
Mm-hmm.
And you can essentially then control the amount of tax you pay by being smart about what you buy. Now, people would get panicked because, and this is the way those who object to the fair tax present it, oh, they're going to add 22%. That was, I think, the number that they were pushing back in 2006, a 22% sales tax. Okay, and that sounds like, oh my, 20%. But you're eliminating all the taxes that go into the prices of the things you buy.
And you're eliminating the payroll tax.
You eliminate the payroll tax because, again, your income tax is not being deducted anymore.
Right.
So when you're making you're making $50,000 a year, you're getting all $50,000 because they're not taking out money for the federal income tax, the state income tax, Medicaid or Medicare,
right.
Social Security. All of that comes out of this sales tax.
Exactly. And it encourages people, because they have more money, to now buy things,
mm-hmm.
maybe buy a home or buy a car.
Right.
Or buy more groceries. I would imagine that there would be certain commodities that would be exempt, like eggs.
Yeah, or medicines or something like that. And again, people hear this, though. They think sales tax, suddenly everything is going to be 22% more expensive, except that the cost of the goods that you're buying, say a gallon of milk is, say, $2.50. You add 22% to that, and suddenly, okay, now we're paying paying $3, except the actual cost of the milk, you've taken all of that, the payroll tax and the other taxes out of it to begin with. So you're back to where you started. And the collection mechanism is already there because every retailer already has to collect and then remit sales tax to the state governments already.
But getting back to the spirits behind all of this, the spirits want to keep, they're the ultimate glue and controllers behind the blob in the swamp and all of the bureaucratic leeches worldwide. And they want that system that they have worked many, many decades to build.
Right.
And centuries to build. They want that to stay in place. And I think that ultimately, whatever entities are driving the emergence of what we call the beast or the Antichrist, that they want that system in place because it's really building the New World Order that this new king will rule over.
Yeah. And artificial intelligence will play a major role in that, which is why when President Trump announced the Stargate project,
people freaked.
It's like, yeah, okay, I get it. And I get the name too. Is like, does he really know what that implies? Stargate, okay, maybe not. I don't think he does, but all right, look, we know it's coming.
He's probably thinking about, okay, movie.
Yeah, sounds pretty cool. Yeah. It's only going to happen when God allows it to happen. So let's not panic. Let's be calm about this. It is going to happen on God's timing. It's going to happen. And when it happens, the people who don't have a biblical worldview are the ones who are going to panic and freak out. Why is this happening? Hey, book of Revelation right here. Revelation chapter 13, if we're still here at that point. We at least have a framework for understanding all of this. The Chinese AI, the DeepSeek, which now is being accused of having learned a lot of what it knows by throwing massive amounts of queries at ChatGPT, which is the OpenAI system.
Exactly.
Which is hilarious, but that's what they do. And what's really funny is that OpenAI said, well, the only way we can train our AI is by giving it access to all of this copyrighted content out there. So you
Giving it
content
access-
producers of
Exactly.
movies, of music, of written word.
And to all of us who are contributing
Yeah,
to the vast wealth, the
We are-
sea of data.
right. We've trained the AI, and now the Chinese AI just basically like a vampire sucked all of that out of OpenAI and it did it for a fraction of the cost.
Yeah.
So as Elon Musk would say, the demon has been summoned, but remember, it's only going to come to fruition and into its power when God allows
That
it.
is so true.
So-
Well, we are going long or getting close to it, I bet.
Yeah, we got a few more minutes here.
Well, you have a question.
I
We're
just want to
finally
say
going to
real
get back
quick,
to the questions.
the hostage release this past week.
Oh,
the Israeli
that's right.
government upset about the way the hostages were released in Gaza, were essentially forced to, they didn't run the gauntlet, but they had to pass through
Young
crowds
women going
of,
through crowds of men.
including a couple of young women, a 20-year-old female soldier. There's a picture of her, Agam Berger, basically freed in front of a crowd at the Jabalia refugee camp. The other 7 who were released, including 5 Thai nationals who came in as farm workers in the Negev, released in Khan Yunis, and the crowds crushed in so tightly that there was danger of them being trampled or people in the crowd being trampled. So the Israeli government paused the release for a bit of the 110 Palestinians who were let go. And they finally did release them. And Netanyahu says that he's been assured by the negotiators that that won't happen again. Pray that it doesn't, but it is a game. It is a game of psychological operations,
And
psychological warfare.
The spirits behind it all is what you really have to take a look at, because
Yeah.
these spirits are entities that are vying for leadership of the world.
Mm-hmm.
They want to be in control. Talk about oligarchs. These are, spiritual oligarchs that are trying to run everything.
Right. So, we just pray for those who are still being held and are still alive.
Oh, I pray that the mother and the 2 children in the Bibas family.
Yeah, the Bibas family.
Yeah, that they are released. I was amazed that the dad was released first.
Yeah, again,
Because I think the
more-
original deal was that you release the women and children first.
Yeah, again, more psychological warfare.
Yeah.
And you pray that the women and the
We're going
children
to
are
have
still
to
open. Yeah.
close it out soon, because I hear the dog saying we've been in here a long
Okay.
time.
Question from Brad. I've always understood that as long as we're talking about the kingdom of the Antichrist, 10 kings of Revelation 17 give their power and authority to the beast, which I understood to be the Antichrist. But upon further examination, the beast which John saw had 7 heads, comes up from the abyss, not from the sea. The Antichrist is the beast out of the sea, Revelation 13:1. This would mean that the 10 kings give their power and authority to Apollyon, which you have identified as Shemaiah, the beast out of the abyss. Well, Brad, I understand the confusion there, but both the beast from the sea, which represents, in biblical terms, represents the abyss, is the Antichrist, the beast that emerges in Revelation 13:1. But the beast from the abyss, Shemaiah, Apollyon, they're, in other words, they're both coming out of the abyss.
Well, I think, and I don't know if you agree with me on this, I think that the beast coming out of the sea is Yam, Leviathan, Chaos, whatever, but it has a number of entities that it's been working with, or
Yes,
representations
yes,
of
Leviathan,
itself.
right.
Yeah. And I think that Leviathan is really the power behind a lot of what's been going on
Yes.
wrong in history.
Chaos. In other words,
Yeah.
we argued in Giants, Gods, and Dragons that we think the spirit behind the human, who is called Antichrist, the Antichrist, is Yam, Leviathan, Chaos. That's the beast that emerges from the sea, from the abyss, because the sea represents the abyss. Yam in Hebrew is also the name of the Canaanite version of Leviathan. That's not a coincidence.
No.
The sea represents the abyss.
And it's interesting also that in all of these stories of the sea dragon, or whatever it's called, it is the storm god who subdues it.
Right.
And the storm god is Satan.
Yeah.
Meaning Satan has control in some way, or thinks he does, over Leviathan.
Over chaos, right. That's Matthew 12, beginning of verse 22 through 26, where Jesus is accused of casting out demons by the spirits, by the power of Beelzebul, Baal the prince. And Jesus replies, if Satan cast out demons by his own power, how will Satan's kingdom stand?
Exactly.
His letter to Pergamum, Revelation 2:13, I know where you live, where Satan dwells. That's a reference to the great altar of Zeus. Zeus is just Baal by a different name. So anyway, Satan, leader of the end times rebellion in Revelation, see that in Revelation 12. Beast from the sea, beast from the abyss, the Antichrist, Leviathan, chaos. Apollyon, Revelation 9, also comes out of the abyss. They're both in the abyss.
Great question. I have one question for you really quickly.
Yes.
If Satan is Zeus, which you and I believe he is, and Daddy, so to speak, comes out of the abyss, will there be an
Apollyon,
instant
Abaddon.
war between the two of them?
Well, that's a really good question. I've speculated on this, that the 5 months where people without the seal of God on their foreheads will be tormented, are they the target, or are they just collateral damage? When Shemiyaza, Apollyon, Abaddon, comes out of the abyss in Revelation 9, does he think he's going to resume control over creation, and does Satan have to put him down? He gets 5 months. Where does that 5 months end? The Bible doesn't tell us.
No.
We don't know.
Because I think a lot of it has to do with understanding in the cultural context at the time that these things were written. Because those who were given the vision, in many cases, had a reference that we don't have anymore.
Right, right.
It's like if I were to say to, someone living, 3 centuries ago, boy, the Cubs won.
Yeah.
Who? What?
Yeah.
Bears?
Cubs? Bears? Oh, no, that's
No, the
football.
Cubs won.
That's a totally different sport. So yeah, exactly. Cultural context means a lot. Some events to tell you about coming up very quickly. I'll be in Canada at the 24/7 Men's Discipleship Weekend. This is at the Valley View Bible Camp in McGregor, Manitoba, February 20th through 23rd. I'll be speaking 8 times over the weekend. There'll be so much, Derek, you'll be sick of Derek.
So much winning.
Yes,
You keep talking. I'm going to
Okay.
go let them out and put them
I'll
in the
go
backyard.
through. Yes, I'll go through the list of upcoming events. Other events there. This is a men's weekend. Praise, worship, prayer, small groups, and me speaking 8 times around the theme: Giants, Gods, and Dragons, restoring the
I
biblical
know.
worldview of the apostles and prophets. You want more information and can join us? You'll find that information and a place to sign up at valleyviewbiblecamp.com. valleyviewbiblecamp.com. April, got an event here in the Ozarks, the Ready Now Expo, Aliens, AI, and the Antichrist. I mean, yeah, that's...
I know.
It's like the headlines right now, the last couple of years. Aliens.
Like a subtitle of one of our
AI, yes. This is being held at Morningside. So the team from the Jim Baker Show is putting this on, but L.A. Marzulli will be there. Pastor Carl Gallups will be there. We will be there. Other speakers. They're actually got some early bird signups right now. They want you to sign up, even though if you're going to be there in person, there's no charge. So you can come see this.
Which is a deal.
Yeah, come see this conference for free. But if you can't make it to the Ozarks, it's April 10th through 12th of 2025. You can stream it online, and the early bird discount for the streaming, which will only be $25, but if you sign up early, get the early bird discount, it's only $18. I mean,
wow.
Yeah, I mean, this is a deal.
It really is. You don't find this kind of deal very often.
No, and for the speakers there, again, this will be at readynowexpo.com, readynowexpo.com. In June, we're going to Indianapolis.
I know. It's actually Carmel, which is
Carmel,
on the
yeah.
north side of Indianapolis. But if you live anywhere in that area, and it's easy to get to. Indy's got a great airport. You can drive in. It's the crossroads of America is what it's called.
Yeah.
So lots of roads lead, all roads lead to Indianapolis. But you can join us there, and that's my old stomping ground, so I'm going to enjoy hanging out in Indy again.
Yeah, this will be at the Drury Plaza on North Meridian in Carmel. Speakers include L.A. Marzulli. We're not going anywhere without L.A. this year,
I know.
guess.
He follows us everywhere we go.
The two of us will both be speaking twice each. Micah Van Huss, Mac Dominic, Pastor Mike Hoggard. And you can get more information at swrc.com, swrc.com.
And in August,
we will be at another event here in the, let's not skip over the Go Therefore conference in July.
Sorry.
July
Didn't have the
25th
thing
and
in front of me.
26th. Yeah, this will be in suburban Dayton, Brookville, Ohio. This is Dr. Mike Spalding's conference. More details on this one coming. I know he's put out a video that I've got to find because he released some information about who's going to be there, but information will be at gothereforeconference.com. Then in August, another one here in the Ozarks, the Remnant Rising Conference, Hear the Watchman, putting this on August 22nd through 24th. It's at the Oasis Hotel and Convention Center.
Oh, it's a beautiful place.
Yeah, beautiful. It's in Springfield, Missouri, close enough to the airport. There's a shuttle, so you can fly into the Springfield Branson Airport, take the shuttle over to the hotel. If you're driving in, it's only 10 minutes from the new Buc-ee's on I-44. Whoa, yeah. And just 15 minutes away from the best aquarium in America.
And Bass Pro number 1.
And Bass Pro Shop number 1, which is connected to the Wonders of Wildlife Museum and Aquarium.
And it's 45-minute drive down to Branson if you want to bring your family and go enjoy Branson. It's a beautiful time to be down there.
L.A. Marzulli will be there. We can say that with confidence. Other speakers as well, but information will be coming soon from hearthewatchmen.com. And again, our tour of Israel in October, the 19th through 30th, with an optional 3-day extension to Jordan. Information at gilberthouse.org/travel.
And that's plenty for this year because you're still dealing with your cane or your staff.
My staff. It's got I noticed it's got a shepherd's crook sort of on the end.
Exactly. So it's a staff.
Yes. It just happened it has 4 little cute feet on the bottom, which keeps it from falling over and keeps me from falling over, which is even more important.
You're dealing with some gate issues, but you know, the Lord is in charge of this and He is going to lead you into, I think, full healing. But if He doesn't, that's okay. We're fine with whatever the Lord brings.
It's being allowed for His purposes, which means there's something in all this I need to learn.
You be my eyes, and I'll be your feet.
That will work. That will work. Tomorrow we're back in our Bible study, the Gilbert House Fellowship. We start on the book of Ecclesiastes tomorrow.
Ooh.
Yeah. And tomorrow night on A View from the Bunker, I'll be talking about not everything is a conspiracy. And trust us, we wear foil hats,
You don't
have to.
We had foil hats for our dogs back in the
That
day.
is right.
Back in the day.
Not
yes, we
everything.
Don't just assume everything is as it is, but
no.
You also can't assume everything is a conspiracy.
That's
what
exactly
you
right.
can do is assume that the fallen realm is in the background at all times.
Yes.
But also the Lord, our shepherd, with the staff and rod that the fallen realm fear. He is always with us. You are never, ever, ever alone in this fight.
Amen. Amen. So that's what's coming up this weekend. And until next time, I'm Derek Gilbert.
I am Sharon Gilbert. And for Grace and Glory, who are barking at the back door. Bye-bye, everybody.
PID Radio is produced by Gilbert House and released under Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives 4.0 International License. Follow us online, Twitter @PID Radio or the PID Radio page at Facebook. Join us each week for our online Bible study, the Gilbert House Fellowship, online at gilberthouse.org.